Hello and good morning and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters. My name is Don Arlen. Many experts have spoken about what Kamala Harris's potential policies would be if she were to be elected president towards Europe and the war in Ukraine. But the most important foreign policy challenges facing the new U.S. president are likely to come from the Pacific. Now we will discuss this with Andrei Lankov. He's from the Korea Risk Group about how China, Japan, both Koreas accepted the replacement of Joe Biden for Kamala Harris. Hello, sir, and welcome to the program this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, now China, of course, with its one China policy, which does not recognize Taiwanese independence, does not hide the threat of international ostracism if it actually does make a move on Taiwan. But this is something that the vice president has had to deal with in somewhat of her capacity as vice president, but she'll very much have to deal with as president of the United States. How do you think Kamala Harris would respond to the current challenges, if you will, facing Taiwan?
I believe that China probably would deal with the Democratic administration. But they are not going to be happy about reaction of any American administration to a possible attack on Taiwan. We cannot be sure to which extent Americans are ready to protect Taiwan. Because after all, it's not recognized as a sovereign state, and therefore it's not a full-scale treaty ally of the United States. But generally speaking, given that Donald Trump has been persistent in their critical attitude to China, in their belief that China is likely to be the major challenge to the United States in the foreseeable future, it's expected that possible invasion of Taiwan is likely to meet a harsher reaction under Donald Trump. And generally, judging by my talks to the Chinese officials, Chinese scholars, they would much prefer whoever is a candidate of the Democratic Party to be it. They don't expect improvement because in the States, they need to contend China. It is a bipartisan agreement. But under Donald Trump, the United States is to have much harsher position on China.
Now, some would say that the situation with Russia and Ukraine, China has been watching closely and maybe even restricted some of its moves and contemplation of doing anything with Taiwan at this point. How much is success in the Russia-Ukraine war tied with Chinese actions potentially involving Taiwan?
It's a very good precedent. China is watching the situation very closely. China cares about a few things. First of all, the Ukrainian resistance has demonstrated that war is not going to be easy, even if it looks to be easy. For China, the Chinese generals are probably reconsidering their invasion plans about Taiwan. Number two, they are looking at how much the United States is willing, not only the United States, generally Western countries are willing to do for Ukraine. And what are the red lines they are unlikely to cross? So far, the United States and Western Europe was, I would say, careful, cautious in supporting Ukraine, and it might be sort of encouraging sign for China. On the other hand, the sanctions. Russia is getting away to a very large extent. Russia doing extremely well now, but it's largely because they have China to rely on. They have China as a major market to sell Russian oil, Russian natural resources. China has basically seemingly it doesn't have such a reliable. So they see the sanctions which are imposed on Russia, and similar sanctions, if imposed on China, will have very bad, deep, seriously bad impact on the state of the Chinese economy. So you see, it's a sort of mixed signal. We have purely military dimension. We have the question of how willing the Western coalition is to help its ally, which is not a treaty ally. And we have a question how efficient or inefficient sanctions are. And as I have said, it's a mixed signal, but on balance, probably the Ukrainian experience makes China to consider and reconsider their plans. I'm not saying they will cancel the invasion plan of Taiwan. I'm not sure it's possible, it might happen, but they probably would be more careful, more cautious in discussing these plans and making final decision, the decision to attack or not to attack.
Now, if we look at South Korea, it also has very good security ties with the United States and guarantees. You have U.S. soldiers stationed there. Now, which one of the candidates in regards to North Korea would be more effective? We also have to remember that North Korea has been supplying Russia with weapons, which it is using against Ukraine, and presumably one of the new U.S. presidents, whoever that may be, is going to have to take action. Who do you think would be more effective in cutting off the flow of those weapons to Russia?
Neither. I don't see what can the U.S. government do about cutting the supply of the North Korean arms to Russia. It's simply impossible. Anything short of blockade of the North Korean coast, which is also not going to help because most of the supplies are shipped by railway. So they can a lot of angry letters, which will have zero impact, and it's all. Talking about South Korea, it's more important, more complicated, because in this case, it makes a difference. North Korea will keep providing Russia with weapons, and United States can do nothing about it, whoever is in charge. But South Korea is a different story, because the South Korean political class is, I would say, praying for defeat of Donald Trump, while also trying to establish good relations with the Republicans, who are much more likely to win. So basically, I would say South Korean decision makers prepare for Trump victory while still hoping for a victory of Kamala Harris. Why? Because Donald Trump has two big problems from the South Korean point of view. First, he has always been in favor of the withdrawal of the US troops from South Korea. He has said it many times, and people who worked with him, they confirmed it many times, that Donald Trump's assumption is that South Korea is a sort of unnecessary and expensive ally, so the US troops should leave the Korean soil as soon as possible. This is a nightmare for the South Korean government and general public. South Korea used to be divided about the US military presence, but this is not the case anymore. Even the nationalist kind of left, now in opposition, they used to be quite anti-American a couple of decades ago, but not anymore. It's a common assumption that without the US military is in trouble, and they are not happy about this intention of Trump. Second is that Donald Trump has indicated, as recently as last week once again, that he would like to make a deal with North Korea. Opinions are divided. He obviously wanted to make a deal of the type he negotiated but was not successful. He tried but could not get in Hanoi in early 2019. That is, North Korea will close down significant part of its nuclear manufacturing facilities, but it's a kind of implicit assumption it will remain nuclear. It's not going to be emphasized, but it will remain nuclear. In exchange, Americans raise sanctions and probably reduce, or if Trump is persistent enough, withdraw US forces from the South. This deal, well, a lot will depend on details, but many people in South Korea are skeptical because they are afraid that Donald Trump will not think well enough before signing an agreement, and as a result, the agreement will basically will not seriously restrict North Korean nuclear and missile capacity, while also making North Korea even more dangerous in some regards because of the access to the Western sorry, not to the West, to the access to the Western markets, other foreign markets, access to currency, and so on. So South Korean public is definitely hoping for Trump to be defeated, but realistically they understand he is likely to win, and they do their best to remain in good relations. Personally, the current South Korean president, Mr. Yoon Suk-yeol, he will have a good chemistry with Trump. They are somewhat similar regards, so they will try to be on good terms, but they still hope that Democrats will win.
Okay, well, Andrei Lankov, director at NK News, thank you very much for joining me today and sharing your insight.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, bye.
All right, well, that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.